Our next presenter is Sally Wilson. And Sally's official title at CB Richard Ellis is Global Director of Environmental Strategy, and all of my four panelists I like to refer to as Chief Green Officers. Let me give you a little background about CB Richard Ellis. It is headquartered here in Los Angeles. It is the undisputed global leader in real estate services. It manages, and it's one of these numbers that's just astronomical, 16 trillion square feet of real estate. If you took 2 through 5 and combined it, it's not as much as CB Richard Ellis around the world. They have 300 offices in 50 countries. As I said, they're headquartered here in Los Angeles. And Sally's background is that she has 20 years of commercial design. She's worked with thousands of different kinds of companies on their real estate sustainability programs. And she serves probably on something terrific known as the U.S. Green Building Council. And she's been there since the beginning. So she's been part of the group that put in place what is called the LEED system, L-E-E-D system, which stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, which is one of the glossary terms. I think what's interesting about this LEED is the real estate industry has really moved forward quickly, and each industry, whether it's food or cars or professional services, there might be standardization, and the real estate people are setting the benchmark for that. So Sally has been part of that, and she would talk a lot about that. She is based out of Washington, D.C., so we thank her for coming today, and I give you Sally Wilson from CB Richard Ellis.
I'm going to use this so you're not looking there and looking back.
Perfect.
Why don't you go ahead and start the
commercial?
The commercial.
Video.
And while I walk up.
Sally, they're coming over to help you with your microphone. Sally, are we missing sound?
We're missing sound.
Okay, so let's try
Can
to
you
start.
start over?
Please, sure.
Yeah.
Where is our sound guy?
There we are.
There we go. Okay.
Can you switch to the PowerPoint, please? So I always get excited when I see this, and thinking back to Chuck's sort of comparison of the green side and the corporate side, and I think one of the things that we have found is a great way to sort of straddle that line between the two. And this is pretty exciting. BP has done a wonderful job, and I have to tell you, I'm a religious customer of BP. I've never used their bathrooms, although now I'm going to try. But I go there because of what they've been doing on the environmental side. So, and I seek them out, and my only issue is I don't think there are enough of them that I can find. So I'd like to see more, or at least know what the brands are for that. The real estate business, in the commercial real estate business, the brokerage, the property management side, that's the side of CB Richard Ellis. We have a variety of different services, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I want to back up to the U.S. Green Building Council. It was an organization that was formed of corporations, of professional service firms, contractors, architects, whole variety of people that worked within the commercial real estate building. It was formed in roughly 1992. They developed their lead product and launched their first lead product, Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's a rating system. It's a third-party rating system, and it has different certification levels. And it's kind of like the UL rating, and it's a rating system for buildings. You can go through a certification process. Their first product out was in 2000. It was called Lead for New Construction, and it basically was a rating system for an owner-occupied building. So it dealt with the building part, and it dealt with the interior part. In 2004, they developed another rating system called Lead for Existing Buildings. And this was essentially for, they said, well, we've made this green building now in 2000, and we're moving along. Now we have to figure out how to continue to operate in a green manner. Then also in 2004, they came out with another product called Lead for Commercial Interiors. And this was for a tenant. It was for the occupier that could go actually into any building if the building met certain prerequisites, and they could have a certified interior. And then in 2006, a product came, Lead for Core and Shell, which was essentially the base building. This became the speculative development option for the developer to go out and build a green building that a tenant could then come in and occupy and live and work in a green building. They could choose if they wanted a green interior or not, going through certain parameters of the program. And so all of this was happening in the early turn of the century, I guess. And it was mostly architects, contractors, and the brokerage business was not into it at all. They couldn't see the business case. They couldn't see the opportunity. They thought it was a fad. And then the dam really broke in 2006 with the Lead for Core and Shell product. And all of a sudden, the developers started to jump onto it. And then the brokers then had to start to sell the buildings. So they had to start to learn about it. So about a year ago, and it was actually, it'll be a year ago, June 1, that we announced our environmental policy. So a year ago, we are a public company, and young public company, right? I think we're like number 500 or something. So, right? And we are based in LA, and Brett White, our president, who I believe is an alumni, right?
He is.
Yeah, right. He went to our general counsel, and he said, we need to write a corporate social responsibility report. We're a Fortune 500 company, and that's what Fortune 500 companies do, so let's go do that. So everybody's scratching their head, what the heck is that? So we started to look at philanthropy, diversity, health and human services, and also sustainability, because those are the components of the report. And everybody felt very comfortable about everything but sustainability. What the heck is sustainability? What does it mean to our business? What are we going to say that we're doing about sustainability that's good for our business and it's good for our stakeholders? And so we went through this whole exploration of what is corporate social responsibility. So what we did was we actually formed a global task force, and we cobbled up 16 individuals from all over the world, Australia, the UK, Europe, North America, South America, all over. And these were individuals like myself. I actually started getting into this business of really environmental transactions and brokerage in 2004. I represented Toyota in an early transaction in Washington for the Government Affairs Office, which is a lead, one of the first Lead for Core and Shell buildings. And so I was sort of an anomaly in our industry, and when I would talk to peers in my industry that kind of look at me cross-eyed like, you know, what are you talking about? And they looked at me as a tree hugger. And then all of a sudden they cobbled us all together and we began to make this exploration about what does it mean to our business. And so, next slide. And this was kind of the genesis of it. It was climate change. It was CO2 emissions. It was the foundation of the information that you see in the Inconvenient Truth and IPCC panel. And all of that came out roughly about a year ago as being real. And I think everybody felt comfortable that the scientific community was now real onto this. And you can look at these patterns of temperature rise, CO2 predictions. And the one thing you don't see on here is actually population. But if you look at population, you know, it's basically causing this. And the fact that we're building and growing, and China is building and growing, and, you know, we keep expanding, we need to be expanding in a smarter and better way. So, next slide. So when we started to look at climate change and started to think about what does it do to our business, to the real estate business, it can do a lot. Look at Katrina. Look at what happened in New Orleans. Real estate wiped out all over the place. If you look at the United States alone, roughly 50%, over 50% of the population lives and works in coastal areas. So a 1 meter sea level rise can be devastating. And I'm actually from the East Coast, so I usually speak about this in the East Coast. I don't know the metrics specifically of Los Angeles and how sea level rise might affect you. But in New York, LaGuardia and Kennedy will be underwater in 2030 if we don't start to change our tactics about the way we manage our CO2. And New Yorkers think that that will greatly affect their business. And that's just sea level rise. It doesn't account for storm surge or anything else. And so looking in and around the coastal areas and what is going to happen to our cities and to our areas if we don't start to manage this, it becomes a big threat. So we looked at this as a big threat to real estate, our business. And so, next slide. So looking here, Anne briefly mentioned about the big difference, and really the transportation industry gets dinged a lot. They get dinged a lot for emissions because you can see it coming out of the back of the car. But you look at the buildings, this beautiful skyline, and you don't see it because they're removed from the scene of the crime. The crime happens at the utility downstream where we use the electricity. So if we actually saw the smoke coming out of buildings, I think we would really do something about it. So next slide. But it's pretty devastating. And by the way, the building number includes residential and commercial office building. The commercial office building is roughly 17%. And so it's much higher on the residential side, and partially because we're still using fluorescent or incandescent bulbs, rather. We're still using technology that is over 100 years old, incredibly inefficient. If we change to CFLs, we can make a huge change in our home. Looking at CB and saying, okay, so we're the biggest real estate company in the world. We have to do something about it. This is a responsibility that we have to start to figure out how we take all our managed property, how do we take our owner-occupied space, our leased space, how do we teach people about what's going on and how we can make a change. So we manage, in property management, and that's just one sector of our business, 1.7 billion square feet around the world. Next slide, please. In the US alone, roughly 2% of the workforce in the United States works in the C.B. Richard Ellis building. So the capacity that we have to educate and influence the behavior of tenants and buildings, and then who then in turn can take it home, is tremendous. And that is something that we feel very strongly about and we're working toward. It's just like what Anne's talking about. It's about educating as much as selling something. So we see it as a huge business opportunity that we have to get the message out. Next slide, please. So the course of action, and again, so this was a huge aha moment for us last year of like, oh my gosh, we have to do something about this. We have to start to figure out how this is going to work. So the first thing the Global Task Force said was, we're going to have an internal policy. Our internal policy is for our offices alone, roughly 400 around the world in over 50 countries, about 5 million square feet in total. In our offices alone and in our operations, we're going to figure out how to be carbon neutral by 2010. That's our statement. And we talked about we could buy offsets today, we can write a check for $1 million today, and we can be carbon neutral, and we can throw it out in the press that we're carbon neutral today, and won't that be great? And we said, no, we're not going to do that, because we have to write a check next year and the year after, and we really don't make any change. So, but instead we said, what we're going to do is we're going to sit down and we're going to figure out how to do this the right way, how to reduce in our operations our consumption of electricity, how to build better, how to manage our facilities better. And this is just in our own operations. We're going to go to school on ourselves, because then in turn we can teach our clients how to do it for them. And we can turn it into a business opportunity. As we take this ourselves through this, we'll turn it into a business opportunity. So then the other component became the external offering, which then we would take all of our service lines and we would teach them how they can offer green services that we can give out to our clients, our large corporate clients we manage their facilities for, or our properties, our buildings that we manage the buildings, or our tenants that we're moving into a new space, how they can understand how they can move into a better environment. And all about, again, reducing CO2 emissions and mitigating climate change. To support both of these, we're going to have a very robust educational program that had a variety of different components related to LEED training, to the Energy Star rating system training, BOMA BEEP, which is another energy efficiency program that we work with as well. Next slide, please. So the roadmap to carbon neutrality basically looks like this. If anyone, for those who don't know, basically you have to go out and you have to measure your footprint. You measure your electricity, your usage of energy, of water, and then you map that to the type of power you're buying and the carbon emissions that then creates. And so we actually hired a third-party independent consultant to do this for us for transparency reasons. And this is actually a service that we do for our clients. So we measure and track carbon emissions for all of our properties and things like that. We do it for our clients, but we said, no, we got to have somebody else do it for us because we want to be transparent about it. That's what you have to do as a public company. So we're in that measurement state, and as you can imagine, it's pretty hard because you have to establish the protocol of what it includes. Does it include travel, business travel? Does it include commuting? Are we going to include our affiliate companies or not? So establishing the protocol and measuring. And we're coming up on our first anniversary of our policy announcement, which was June 1, and we will announce our measurement after the first year. It's taken us roughly a year to get that measurement into place. But at the same time, we have operational policies that we're working on within our office. For instance, all our offices are moving to no bottled water. We have pitchers, we have filtered water, and then we've bought water bottles for people to refill and things like that. So we're really trying to limit our use of bottled water. The other thing is double-sided printing or double-sided copying and things like that. Setting the technology and changing the technology to do something like that is pretty critical. And at first we got pushed back and people are like, I can't read a document on two sides. And we're like, well, have you ever read a book? So we read books all the time. Why can't we double-side print? I mean, think about how much you save when you do something like that. So simple things like that we're putting into place, as well as when we move our major offices, we're moving and designing LEED space, LEED for commercial interior space. And we just relocated in Washington, D.C., and we have a 65,000 square foot office that is a LEED for commercial interior. It's a goal-rated space. And we take that space and we use it as an educational facility for our clients to come in, to show them it doesn't look like a hobbit house. It's a great working environment. And so we bring them in. We also have a green roof. We negotiated the right to take a ballasted roof, that area off of one of the floors and turn it into a green roof so we can bring our clients and say, this is what a green roof looks like. It's because I think people just don't understand what it is. It's all about awareness. Education awareness about how easy it is to make these kind of low-cost, no-cost changes. Next slide, please. So internal policy, we're also part of the Carbon Disclosure Project, which is you can go to the Carbon Disclosure Project and you can see the Fortune companies that are interested in this. This is an important point because I think as you look to find a green economy or some sort of a green business, that is a great way to look to see what other companies are doing it, because The companies that are signed on to the Carbon Disclosure Project, and part of it is to green down the vendors, to green the supply chain and the professional services. One of the big things that happens with our company, whenever we get an RFP, somebody says, well, what's your sustainability position? And we have an answer now. A year ago, we never had an answer. And I think we see the law firms, the professional service firms, other vendors getting the same sort of request on what is your sustainability position. So you have to find the position for your business so you can make that statement. Next slide. I'm not going to go through all of those. The other thing that we did, which is notable, is we ran our conference in Toronto last September, and this was 3 months after we made our announcement. We said, okay, and when we do something, we just convert very quickly. We're entrepreneurial, and we move very quickly. So we had a conference in Toronto. We had 4,000 people, and in 3 months, we figured out how to make it a carbon neutral event. Next slide. And so you can, back up, sorry. So you can see we offset 200% of the CO2 produced and at least 60% of the other emissions that affect health. One of the things we did was everybody that came to the conference, anybody who flew, we asked them to buy offsets. And so when I came here from Washington, I bought my offset. I always buy my offset when I fly. And so we're putting a policy in place, a central resource for legitimate offset that our people can find and buy in our company through our travel plans. Next slide. This gives you an idea of all the different types of services that we offer in real estate. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but I want to talk about asset services and brokerage, which are our two main components. Next slide. Asset services is essentially property management. We manage, in the US, about 700 million square feet. It's a lot of real estate that we manage. And it's just the building side. Now, so we have the same issue that BP had, is that we own none of this property. So we're trying to come up with the business case to present to the owner on how do you make investment and reductions in your building that reduce emission. And so what we did was we had, and it's all about education and showing them the roadmap to get there. So we developed a program called Sensible Sustainability. Next slide. And it's essentially 5 parts of it. It's resource management, waste stream management, green building materials, education training, and communications. And we start with essentially we have this 101 tips that we have, and we go through and we identify low-cost, no-cost measures that we can put into buildings to reduce energy, to optimize performance on energy by making a variety of changes. We're doing energy audits, and we're advising our clients about what their building is doing on an emissions level. And one of the reasons we're doing this is because we're looking into the future and we're thinking about what is a cap and trade program going to look like, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit later. What is a cap and trade going to look like in our business, in the real estate business, in the future, and what are you investing in today? So we have to put that into play as we advise our clients. So communications is key, because here's the great opportunity, because we can make a building and run it great. But if the tenants don't behave responsibly and utilize the services, the recycling services and things like that we create in the building, then we've really failed. So communication down to the tenant level is very important. So we have a number of programs that we work with on lighting, on recycling. I mean, we have a program where we take, you can bring in your fluorescent tubes from home or your batteries from home or whatever, and we don't want to go in the garbage. We want to manage that recycling, and we want to be a resource for the tenant as well as for the landlord. Next slide. And so here are 101 tips. You can actually go on our website and find this. Easy to find, but and we have it kind of broken down so you can actually read it, believe it or not. Next slide. On the brokerage side, we have what's called a sustainability practice group that in the US we have 21 members around the country, 12 are lead AP, and we focus on delivering sustainable transactions. So we're out doing market research on, and evaluating buildings on sustainability aspects before tenants make commitments, and then we're negotiating with the landlord on the tenant's behalf in terms of getting the building to support their efforts. And what we're finding as we do this, again, it goes back to education. A lot of this is educating the landlord about how they can change their building to make it perform better and make it more sustainable. And fortunately, we're working, when we go out, we're working with, you know, the Toyotas and a variety of other companies that have core missions on sustainability, so we're pushing it out there. But everybody's interested in finding out how they can be more sustainable. And so we're teaching the landlords how they can make their buildings better for the tenants. And then once we have our tenant in there, they turn it around and sell it to somebody else, like, look at my building, it's green. So again, it's about transformation of the marketplace. That's what we're looking to do. Next slide. So here's just we're just starting here. Again, our effort is barely 10 months old, but we're very proud of what we've been doing, and we know we have a long way to go, but we have a lot of great opportunity. Next slide. I think that's it. You can find some of the standards and goals that we have for 2008, and I'll take questions.
Please. Question here.
Hi, my name's Lorraine Sudlock. I'm with Black & Decker Hardware and Home Improvement. We've been looking at developing our own sustainability program, and we've kind of gotten involved in LEED as it relates to materials and resources, innovation, design, and post-consumer, pre-consumer recycled content. But what we've found is there seems to be a feeding frenzy of different groups going out for green building guidelines. I'd like to get your perspective on NAHB creating their guidelines for residential building, turning that into an ANSI standard, and then you have the competition between U.S. Green Building Council, et cetera. So who do you think is going to end up being the lead green building agency?
Well, you know, I would have to say USGBC since they're our partner. But I really do believe that because their rating system is very robust and it's a certified system. A lot of the other rating systems, I'm not going to name them, but they're voluntary. And so unless you have that third-party certification, there are many companies that are essentially greenwashing what they've done. And I think when you have the public is generally unaware about what it really takes to be a LEED building, nor do they need to be. And so it is very much LEED. The U.S. Green Building Council LEED rating system is very much like the UL rating system. And I think the fact that professional organizations like the AIA and you know, the different code organizations have joined on with the U.S. Green Building Council have essentially legitimized them, and they've been in this business for 15 years. So I think they clearly have the dominant brand in the green building industry in the United States.
Great. I have a question. So we've talked about all of these buildings, obviously, you never say obviously, but new buildings, it seems like it's to work forward. What do we do with all the buildings for the last couple hundred years? Does CB Richard Ellis get to do a green retrofit and become a really wealthy company? How hard or how easy is it to do a green retrofit? Right.
Well, I think that's a great question. New construction makes up about 5% of the commercial building stock out there, and everybody should be building green as a matter of course. LEED buildings are less than 1% of that 5%, so you know it's very small, the amount of buildings. And this is where we come in on the property management side, because the amount of building, that 95% that exists, can be better managed and it can be modified through our Sensible Sustainability Solutions program. And so we're doing a number of things, especially with Energy Star. And actually, we just received the Energy Star Partner of the Year award this week from the EPA Energy Star rating system. And I don't know, how many people know that buildings can be Energy Star rated? So that's pretty good, actually. But most people think it's just refrigerators. But your home can be Energy Star, and your building can be as well. The other thing that we've done is you have the LEED for existing buildings product, and we have signed on with the USGBC to take 100 of our managed properties and put them into that portfolio. So we're working hard, you know, to change that component. We see that as the biggest business opportunity for us. I mean, we're not developing buildings.
Gotcha.
That's not our job. We're managing, so we're trying to fix the 95% that's there.
Great. I think we had a question over here. Gentlemen. He is coming from reserve from the media table.
Well, I am with the media, but I'm also on the Board of Counselors of the School of Public Policy. And
Wonderful.
I like the last presentation. I'm wondering if you were here as an expert looking at USC. A lot of universities have moved to be greener. USC is not one of them. I wondered what you'd advise them to do.
Well, I think this would go. You know, I brought my own glass of water.
And what do you
for my
charge per hour?
Yeah. Well, I think first off, you have to do a verification of what you have here. Do an energy audit of all of your buildings. The change to go to fluorescent is incredible. It does a lot. I mean, just looking at these lights, you can change these to LEDs now. So the LED component, and like Ann was saying, once you get into that, you see how quickly the payback becomes, and so I think that's a very, very easy thing to do. So you have a lot of the universities that are actually have very strong green initiatives and green programs. And the other thing is you probably have your own utilities on site, and you have probably a great opportunity to do some alternative energy sources here on site.
And we are going to hear a little bit later on about what USC is doing from a campus-wide. Gentleman in the back. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joel Manfredo. I'm the proud father of 2 students here at USC. And I have a question that is a little bit different because I understand this space quite well. I had an Energy Star building when I was running properties. However, one of the more intriguing things I find in terms of conservation is use less. So I'm wondering if CBRE is doing anything along the lines of space design, like a building, like a Cisco Building 14. I recognize that it's kind of counter to what you do because it requires smaller spaces. So you get less management fees.
Well, we're not, I mean, the building envelope is the building envelope, and it just means you have more tenants. But on the tenant side, which is actually the side that I'm on, when we go out into the market, we're working very closely with the architectural and design team up front. I think the old model when we were doing spaces that were not as efficient or energy efficient or space efficiency wise, the model was, you know, owner, broker, architect, you know, engineer, contractor. It was very linear, and now it's very holistic, where you have everybody at the beginning up front at the table, and everybody is committed to, you know, working hard to find the biggest reductions in a variety of different areas. So it's a much more holistic model. So that's one of the things that we're doing to kind of come up with the workplace efficiency, you know, moving forward. And whether that's more or less space, you know, it depends on the programmatic need and the business need of the client.
Great. Any questions? Any further questions, as I say? Great. Oh, we do have one more. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm David Hitchings from Northrop Grumman Corporation, and I guess we're one of your clients.
Yeah, you're a client.
A lot of our leases on our buildings include the resources as a component of the rent. And so when we do our return on investment calculations for some of the investments within the building, it's hard to separate out what we pay for rent and what we're paying for resources. So it's hard to sell to our CFOs and that type of thing. Do you see what do you see the trend being in negotiating the leases when we go after these things, and do you offer renegotiation services so that we can actually see our energy bills?
We offer all services, but frankly, this is really an interesting issue, and in some ways it's key to, I think, the success of really moving and changing things going forward. The issue at hand is lease structure, and it varies by market. You might have what's called a full-service lease, where the energy cost is embedded within the rent number, or you might have a triple net lease, where the rent or the electricity is net of the rent number. But that might be prorated and shared throughout the building. One of the things that we're promoting and pushing forward is that the tenant be able to submeter their own space and track their own usage, because otherwise you can't really verify your footprint or your usage. And if you're investing in daylighting systems or energy efficient lighting and things like that, then you're not realizing the benefit. And if you're in a building where, if you're operating 9 to 5, but you're in a building with another group that's operating 24/7 or 7 to 11, you're essentially paying their bill. So we're trying to get that righted. I think moving forward, we're actually working on a research paper on this right now and looking at it from the owner's side, because as a property manager, there is an incentive to have it to be full service and to invest in that so that you get the savings. But on the tenant side, you have another incentive. So I think there's going to be a new lease structure that is going to have to evolve out of this situation, where both the landlord and the tenant are incentivized to make changes. And I think tracking that alongside with what happens in a cap and trade world might be the driver of putting that out there.